Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to Baddies Mean Business. Today, we have a very special, actually two very special baddies to introduce to both of you all. They are the co-founders of Girl and The Gov. Girl and The Gov is a multifaceted digital media company built around flipping the world of politics on its head. As seen on Teen Vogue, Politics New York, So She Slays, Podcast Movement, and more, the Girl and The Gov educates young people on politics today, while connecting them with one another and their community through podcasting, bespoke events, and having active digital channels. Welcome, Sam and Maddie.
Thanks for having us. What an intro.
Thanks for the intro. Loving it.
Of course. Everything that we have ever admired about you guys. This is really exciting for us too, but go ahead and introduce both of y'all from your own words.
Ooh, Maddie, you want to go first?
My name is Maddie. I am co-host and co-CEO along with...
Correction, it's Madison Blue, by the way.
Whoa. We were talking about this a little bit before.
Yeah, Well, really threw me off there, Samantha. My name is Maddie. Don't come for me with that's what my mother calls me. But I'm co-host, co-CEO of Girl and The Gov and Girl and The Gov, the podcast. And I live in California. I grew up in California in the Bay Area and never ever thought I'd have a podcast, but here we are, and never thought I'd be on an entrepreneurial pursuit, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. But always since college knew I wanted to work in politics and social impact and such. That's definitely been a constant for me, but it's been an interesting journey and just going after building this brand with my partner here, Samantha Cantor.
So much love in this room. I love it.
The girls are fighting, aka over names, which is a classic for the two of us. But
cameras on. Cameras are on.
Yeah.
We got the footage, guys. But I'm Sam, Sammy, Samantha, whatever. I'm the blonde one of the duo Girl and The Gov. And I'm the East Coast one as well. So Maddie's taken the West Coast by storm. I'm taking the East Coast by storm, or by not storm. I don't know what the opposite of that phrase is. But nonetheless, my backstory is really I majored in government in college, was always interested in it. Kind of was curious about that path and went another direction post-grad and ended up in PR in the design world, and then found my way back to politics and founding Girl and The Gov and trying to solve for essentially a market hole. And I think I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I never knew what it was going to be. I knew through some testing, if you will, of some really bad ideas that it just would happen when it would happen. And that's what happened with Girl and The Gov. You always have to try. And I think that's my advice without even being asked, is just always give it a shot. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else to say. Should I give like a fun fact, like a favorite color?
Yeah,
I'm so bad at
fact. Give a fun fact. Why not? Or Riley? You have an idea?
What is like something that like not everybody knows about you guys that you may not always talk about, but is totally okay to share publicly?
I've never had a bloody nose before in my life, or a cavity. Proud of that one.
No.
I also haven't had a cavity,
very
but I
subtle
have had a
flex.
bloody nose.
Yeah. Both pretty niche. Fun facts.
But you did have to have your finger stitched back on.
I had my finger cut off.
I think the fact that you didn't start off with that one was pretty.
Yeah, my name is Maddie, and my finger
that should be your
fell
personality
off.
trait.
Everything's fine. She's back on. She's there, and she's functioning. So thank you for your concern, everyone.
Sammy, what about you? What's your one thing?
You know what I need to do? I need to pull out my never have I ever list, because I literally have a list, because this is
actually so smart, because I can never think of stuff.
Spill the tea.
It's honestly, I always struggle, and I'm so competitive. So I'm like, I gotta start writing them down. And it all started because I was on this train ride out to the Hamptons with one of my friends. And if you've ever been on a train to the Hamptons, you're basically packed in like sardines. It's ridiculous. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do to make this like less miserable? And you're standing, it's just whatever. And so I was like looking out the window, trying to like concentrate, not make awkward eye contact with anyone. And so I kept going by things, and I was trying to observe things. I was like, oh wait, never have I ever been here. Never ever done this, whatever. And so that's where it all started. let's see. Oh, I've never broken a bone.
Oh, that's a good one.
There's that.
You guys
I've never
both
owned a Bop It. The fact
What?
that that's on my list. I've never owned a Bop It. I was never gifted that as a child. And
That couldn't be more niche.
That's extremely niche. Extreme
That's
niche.
incredibly relatable for me because I have not
It's
had
like-
either.
Well, you guys
How do you say that?
are missing out on the Bop It. Those things are the best. Honestly, I'm gonna go check Amazon right after this and maybe order one.
Yeah, do they even sell it anymore? I don't know. I thought they were
I don't know.
discontinued. I don't know.
I know, like the song.
They're probably on
it's like
eBay.
poppy.
Same with Wii. The Wii, I am a Wii
I have one
stan,
myself.
but they don't sell them
Same.
anymore, and so you can
Really?
only get you can
I
only get
didn't
them
know
like
that.
on eBay or somewhere used. Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. I think we know what time it is, Kenzie.
Me too. Okay, it's
If you
time for
wanna
Baddie
jump us off.
Briefing. Obviously. So I guess for starters, we should have one of our lovely guests go. So Maddie, do you want to take it away? So you're going to do your favorite of the week and your intention for the week.
Favorite is the vanilla pumpkin candle from Trader Joe's. I am like not a huge like autumn decor gal, but my roommate is, and so she went hard at Trader Joe's and bought a bunch of shit. And the one thing like she came back with that I'm obsessed with is these. She got like 10 of these candles, and they just smell so delicious and just really give you the fall vibes that you need. I will also say one other thing. I fully got influenced and I bought the Hailey Bieber lip treatment, and I highly suggest it. And that has just been a favorite for me, and it's been one of my most favorite purchases lately. As far as an intention, I think my intention lately has been to be mindful, just like across the board in life, like from eating to the activities I do to just everything I do, just trying to be mindful, because sometimes I just get lazy and I act mindless and just like want to just unplug and turn my mind off. But like being mindful has been a nice little tweak in my life that has been helpful, making me more productive and just feel better. And yeah.
That's a really good
Amazing.
one. And it's so funny you were brought up like Hailey Bieber, because this last weekend or week was the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference, and I went with my boss, and she was one of the speakers.
Oh my God, you were
And
there?
Yeah. She was one of the speakers, and she is probably like the most gentle, like nice person like in real life.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really reflects in her YouTube channel. And so
Definitely.
I'm obsessed with her.
super sweet.
I love her too.
Amazing.
Yes.
Interesting. I could totally see that. I watched the Call Her Daddy interview. And like, I like
Same.
Hailey Bieber, but I'm not like a diehard. Like Maddie, I feel like is like a diehard fan. I'm just like neutrally positive, if that makes any sense. And
Definitely same.
watching that interview too, like like it's like the way she like speaks and the way she like you can tell she really thinks about what she's saying, and she like takes the time to like process it. Granted, she's in the position where she really has to think about what she's saying, like 1,000%. But I do agree. Like I feel like there's this gentle delivery for anything she's saying. Like could be saying like a serious thing, but somehow it's still like very, I don't know. It's
And she's a big voting advocate, and
it's a skill.
she's just been killing it
Yeah.
with making sure everyone's
Yes.
getting ready to vote for this election, which is we can't stand anymore when our queens do that.
Amazing. Yes. What is it
True.
that you say? Friends who
Friends
Get
don't let friends miss
friends.
elections.
exactly
Yeah.
that had to be dropped at least once during this
Yeah, we have merch
episode.
that says that. Go check it out. Socialgoods.com.
that's my
Weird.
intention, is to make sure that friends don't
That's good.
let friends miss elections. That's the intention of the week
I love
and
it.
the month. And I'll see y'all at the polls November 8th. So
Yes. That's a great
for
intention.
sure.
Exactly.
So yeah, group chats open. Honestly, even
Parties.
maybe all parties.
Mhm.
I heard. I
Maddie
listened to your
kills it.
latest episode. And I heard about your party that you were throwing for your friends, and I thought that was a fantastic idea.
Thank you. Everyone throw a voting party for your friends. Wine, cheese, ballots. Do it.
Maddie, you inspired me because I also have a bunch of like makeup, skincare favorites. So this past week, I spent a lot of money at Sephora. Mom and Dad, if you're listening,
Classic.
don't yell at me. Thanks, even though I'm literally 22 and I buy my own stuff. But I went on the hype of everybody's been saying on TikTok that there's like the holy trinity of skincare. It's like Caudalie, however you pronounce it, and Sunday Riley's. Is that what you say? Is that what it is? I don't know. And then another one. I can't remember that one. But anyways, the first two, I bought 2 or 3 products from them. So specifically the Caudalie, it's like the Vino Perfect. It's to help with dark spots and acne scars and all of this good stuff. And then I got a vitamin C serum as well. So a whole bundle of favorites this week. But specifically that one Caudalie product, amazing. Chef's kiss. Literally been using it for a couple days and already notice a difference in like my acne scars and stuff. They just look less, my skin just looks less dull, and I don't know, it doesn't really make any sense, but from like skincare, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's doing what the description said it was doing, and I like it. So for my intention, I've been trying to be really not grounded, that's the wrong word. So basically, I've been really getting back into yoga and moving my body. So I'd say like my primary like intention would be just like movement and trying to stay active, but not in the go workout sense, but just like always moving my body, because it's so associated with mental health and just like energy level and everything of that sort. And I've just been noticing how better and how much more relaxed and less stressed and just more energized that I've been in the past few weeks, just because I've been consistently going to yoga and like moving my body, whatever. And so I think just the concept of movement is definitely my intention. Just like translating that into the fall when seasons can be like a little bit harder to keep your body moving. I think just like trying to intentionalize that this week and then weeks to follow, but specifically this one, just because I'm going to be traveling next week and things are coming up. And so that's definitely on the highlight of what I'm trying to be intentional with in this period.
She's actually coming to visit me, so I'm really excited about that as well.
This is true.
I know, it's going up. It's going up. I'm so excited. But I'll get through mine pretty quickly. So my favorite of this week is actually House of Dragons, and so I don't know who watches that.
Me. I'm obsessed.
Amazing.
Daddy Damon.
Daddy Damon, I'm saying. Not to like you give up the clues, but I'm just saying Rhaenyra and Damon, been waiting for that. It's the only
why
time.
am I so into the ancestral the incest? It's just
terrible.
It's a whole thing.
Sam and I are like,
you'll
what?
get it when you watch it. No judgment.
Don't ask.
If you know,
okay.
The statutory incest in the first episodes. You just sounds problematic. Wait till you watch.
It's how they maintain.
There is, I cannot remember which candidate it is, but there is a candidate out there that was like, oh, incest isn't that bad. So maybe he's watching.
Like, let's make sure we keep the lines between digital and reality, just so we can understand that. As for my intention for this week, though, I'm getting rid of my subscriptions because I actually have a lot of outstanding subscriptions. So hashtag Truebill, hashtag Mint, thank you. I just didn't realize it, and there's just like those little things you do the free trial and it automatically bills you afterwards. And so
wait, me too. I actually just went through that this morning because I was canceling one of my credit cards because I hate it, and they were supposed to lock my card, and they like months ago, and then I realized that it was still charging me for like subscription charges because apparently those don't stop even though you cancel your card. And I'm like, are you joking? Like, my card is wiped. Why is it still charging me?
Wait, that's
so I ended up having to like go through all the ones that were on like my old credit card and like change it to my new one. And I ended up not canceling any of them because classic me, just keep buying things, but had to switch all of my subscriptions over. And I was like thinking about that. I was like, it's crazy how we just get caught up in all of these subscriptions. It's a relatively new model, right? I feel like it's
and
a new thing.
They totally like the businesses
trap people.
No, they know that's going to happen, and they're like, "This is like the amount of revenue we can account for from people forgetting the fact that they are using our services." And there's like so Truebill does subscription. It's like a subscription to remove your subscriptions. It's quite extraordinary. To me.
I've seen that. Yeah,
I'm like,
I've tried to use that before.
What? Incredible.
The whole thing I think is like so interesting though. That's why some of the subscriptions are like priced pretty, like it seems reasonably, like if it's like, oh, it's only $10 a month, because it seems like not that much, whatever. But then when you forget about it, and then it's what, $120 a year, and then they're banking on how many people times 120 to bring that in. People aren't even using the product.
And when they notify you that they're raising the price, it's in an email that you never read. Like, why would you read like Spotify's newest like email blast that is you think is spam, but it's actually them telling you they're raising the price. You just don't. There's all of that too. It's just all so sneaky.
So I'd love to hear people's best practices and how they manage this, because I know this is like an ongoing issue for many people, and the business sense in me is, okay, who's solving this and who's solving it? But let's go ahead and get into the questions that we were planning on asking you, which is talking about you guys and what you do with Girl and The Gov. So just talk about a little bit more about Girl and The Gov, what inspired you guys to start it, and whether or not you guys dreamt about being president one day, or was this just something that happened more recently?
Oh, wow. The dream about president. I don't think we've ever been asked that either.
I've never had that dream, and I still don't.
No, yeah, no, same here.
Yeah.
I think I
I'm not
always
trying to get those gray hairs.
Yeah, no. Honestly, gray hair is so chic. So like I'm here for it. But
The
like,
wrinkles.
Out of like being chic, not because I'm so stressed about like the nuclear codes. You know, it's like a different type of like vibe. But in terms of what I like wanted to be as like a little kid and the idea of being president, I don't think I put two and two together. But I always wanted to do something with impact. I definitely always knew that. I had no idea where that was going to lead me. But I don't think president was ever like the thing for me. I was like, let me evaluate other choices.
100%.
I still feel the same way. Like, even if I ran for office, I don't think, I know I would not be running for president. And it's not because of a scenario of, oh, I couldn't do it, any of that. It's just like general like interest and like where you can actually like, make the most impact. Like I would rather run for like, a Senate or Congress or a state position. But that's like a whole can of worms to the side. In terms of Girl and The Gov and starting it and how it was all inspired, it really was like a few different things that happened. Obviously, 2016 is a big impetus for, oh my God, what the hell is happening in this country? But 2018 was then sort of that second step because it was that, okay, can we put a check on what happened in 2016? And those midterm elections, I was having a lot of conversations with my friends, and a lot of them were not registered to vote, or they were, but they weren't planning on voting. And those conversations evolved into me asking questions. Okay, why is that the case? What is the thing that's stopping you? What's that barrier to entry? And so many of them said that they just didn't know where to start. They had no understanding of our electoral system, of the candidates. It just felt really overwhelming and intimidating to them. And I took that into like my good old noggin over here. And at the same time was thinking about my own experience in the political world and trying to stay civically engaged after graduating, and especially being not in the political field. Like how was I going to keep doing that to some degree? And every time I would try and get involved, I just never really found the right fit in terms of an organization. A lot of them they weren't oriented towards young people. They were oriented to people that were like 50 plus or had grandkids. And I was like, I appreciate this existing, but I can't relate. So I really had to pair both of those together. Okay, I've got this issue. I want to get involved. I want to be more civically engaged still, no matter what. And I'm not finding the right place to do that. My friends aren't getting civically engaged, but could create a lot of change if they were. How do we solve that? And so I was like, okay, let's put the PR brain like right on this. And what I came up with was events. I was like, let's meet people where they are. Let's solve for it directly. Let's make it as easy as possible. And take a little bit of the work out of that. So those events really did that. If you're working your 9 to 7 o'clock and then you're going to a Pilates class after, let's bring the politics to the Pilates class. Let's bring it to the rooftop bar. So it became that sort of scenario of like, how can we solve this where the people already are? Let's not duplicate the work that we're doing. And therefore, let's rebrand politics. Let's change the game. Let's change the conversation. And also let's break down those barriers of making it intimidating and also taboo to talk about, because that was another thing that I found, Maddie's found too, in conversations of it's just hasn't been the thing that's been like, okay to talk about. It's always controversial. It's one of the 3 things you're not supposed to bring up on a date, which is like a thing I could say till I'm blue in the face, but it's just true. And so we're trying to change that so that it is that conversation you're having with friends, no matter what the issue is or, you know, what the timing is. Like politics should be a part of your vernacular. And so that was really the origin story for the whole company itself, but it honestly would not be where it is today or where it's going if I hadn't met Maddie, which is a Instagram meet cute during the pandemic when, you know, the company was a mere events company just getting its beta phase started. And basically, obviously, we had to stop doing events during the pandemic. And I was following people on social, trying to do the classic follow for a follow, and came across Maddie's profile, she followed me back, DM'd me and was like, hey, want to start a podcast? And the rest is history from there, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, super wild. Again, didn't ever see this for myself. Like, Sam did have the kind of entrepreneurial like spirit in her and always wanted to do that. But for me, like, again, I've worked in politics, I worked on political campaigns, and then just came across Girl and The Gov, and it was a mission that I had always felt was also needed. And so it just resonated with me so much. And I always had this weird pipe dream though about like podcasts. I didn't ever think I would execute it, but it just was so interesting because it was at a time during the pandemic. I wasn't sure what my next like career move was going to be. And mixing this mission with something that I also was like curious about, which was podcasting, which is the perfect thing to explore in a pandemic. It just all meshed together, and now we're over 2 years in and over 100 episodes in, and it's just been a whole journey, but it's worked out. And we always talk about how crazy that is because we're just like literally we're two strangers met on Instagram, which like sounds like call MTV catfish because it just sounds like one of those situations that you should steer away from, but it's really worked out. And it just, we always talk about how it's such a motivator for us too, that just I guess just kind of serendipity of our meet cute is like such a motivator because we're like, that just didn't happen for no reason.
I love that so much. For one, being audacious enough to just be like, hey, let's do the podcast. Let's start a company. I think that the thing I noticed that made me so interested in Girl and The Gov was, for one, because I've lost friends before because we weren't able to have conversations around politics. It was just not something that was like, we could have decent conversations and have like general understanding. And I always thought that's something that I feel like it was obtainable. Two was because you guys have this incredible dynamic. Rather than politics and business being separated, you found a way to integrate it together and have it be more of a collaborative parallel that others can just like, it's for you guys, like you saw that as an opportunity. For me, I also had like a similar sense of I wanted to impact something. I thought entrepreneurship was a great way to do it. Now I found venture capital as another way as well. That was something that always inspired me about your guys' story, is like taking something that is, which could be the theme of this episode, unsexy, and making it more approachable and even beautiful. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
I ditto to everything that Riley said. And I also just want to say thank you for creating this space for people to feel empowered and encouraged to, even though they might not know where to start when it comes to politics, to just like hop on the ride and follow the journey and just like, take that action for themselves and for our country. I think even growing up, like Riley and I both, we've, like Riley said, lost friends or just have had experiences where like we grew up in a really small town. And so our perspective of growing up and learning about politics at a young age was like, at least for me, not really a big deal, like a big thing. Like I feel like my senior year of high school was the first time I really explored like what the Senate meant and all these just like factors of democracy. And we were like, what, that you're throwing this at me really early. And I just like didn't really know where to start. And so
yeah.
Then coming out of high school and being like a freshman in college and not really knowing a thing or two about politics, being like, I should be knowing about this. I get a vote in 2 years, or no, I'm voting now. I'm 18. Like I'm about to vote and be eligible to vote. Like, why is this not more proactive? And so I think it's just absolutely incredible. And Riley said too, like we were so inspired through you two and seeing something that might not be very sexy and might not be very fun to talk about and running with it is amazing. And also I just appreciate how you two are so easy to talk to, like having this conversation with you and not feeling an ounce of judgment or anything about where people are in their journey with politics or anything in their life is just like really amazing. Yeah. And to have that as like also a foundation of a business is amazing because people can feel comfortable and related, even though no matter where they are in their journey. And I think that's amazing.
Thank you. That
Thank
is
you.
such like it's the real foundation of why we want to do this. And we've been in political spaces where we haven't felt welcome and we have felt intimidated, and like we want to crush all of that. And there's so many different ways that we're trying to rebrand politics, from just like how to consume the information, how to make it easier, just like from definitions, but also that actual kind of like social cultural side of it that's pushed so many people out. So there's just like tons of ways the space needs to evolve and welcome people in. And so we're just slowly chipping away at that. But thank you for all that.
Yeah.
And like to add to, I think what part of the appeal is, and part of the thing that's so key to us is like, we're still learning. Like, we don't know everything in politics. I don't think we ever will. I think we'll have a job for a million years because we're still always discovering something and have more conversations in the political space to always have. We're learning just as much as people listening to the podcast or following along are. Every interview that we have with our guests, it's like we walk away and we're like, oh my God, wait, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we have so many fun facts from that. Or wow, can't believe we just learned that. Super cool. Can't wait to apply that in conversation or where else. And I think that's really part of what we wanted to do from the jump. And I think when I started the company itself as like an events company, like part of my brain was like, I don't want to be the front facing person of this because I don't know everything. And I don't think that felt right. Like I wanted the mission of rebranding it and making those conversations and creating those spaces for conversations, but maybe me not in it. And then I think the beautiful part about Maddie and I meeting is it was like the two of us could come together and both be like, no, we're going to do this. And we're going to ask the quote unquote stupid questions that aren't stupid questions. We are comfortable being the people that don't know everything and constantly learning and evolving and like being held accountable. And I think that's something that's so needed in the space of being like, yeah, it's okay not to know everything. Just as I think the thing it needs to be is like, as long as you're putting yourself in a spot where you're excited to learn about something, or maybe it's not excited, but like open-minded to learning about a new topic. And I think that's really been a part of our bread and butter, and I hope it continues to be.
Yeah,
diving
into that discomfort.
I think you guys are doing an incredible job of it, because just one of my favorite parts about what you do is that you do reports and you do the hot topics, the tea of what's going on in the political world. And for me, it's like listening to that is something that I am able to absorb a lot easier than, say, like watching CNN or Fox or the typically like news outlets, which is totally fine. But I was curious about your guys's like the response to what you were doing from the community that you have built, and maybe what was surprising about the folks that you have met along the way.
The response has been amazing, and it's been like one of the most rewarding parts, I would say, is just hearing from people of how helpful it's been, how they feel so prepared to vote this year, like finally, or like excited and prepared to vote, which is like always exciting, like hearing people like, oh, I registered to vote. And it's like we've always said from the very beginning, we're like, if we even just help one person register to vote, like we're going to be so fulfilled by what we're doing. And so there's that of just hearing from people actually like taking those steps to be civically engaged, and then from people reaching out or commenting and being like, I have been looking for this, I have been needing this, thank you. Like all of that has been super rewarding and like really reassuring too, that we're on the right path. Like, this is needed, and like this is a huge market hole we are filling, and there's just a wide range of responses that like are super exciting to us. I would say like for surprising, I don't know, Sam, if you have anything, but I think it's just been weirdly surprising in a way that like there's so many people who have felt like us, and like that, be it trying to work in the political space to trying to like get to know your ballot or just trying to get civically engaged. Like obviously we assumed everyone felt this way, but I guess the surprising part has been that people really do want this, because sometimes I even like get worried that people don't really care at all, and it's the thing is that they do, and like the problem is that they like don't know how to enter the space and they don't know how to learn or where to start. But because I always just in the back of my mind had this anxiety, because I hear some of my friends like complain about how they don't know how to get started, and it makes me feel like they don't really want to or don't care enough. But like that is just going to be farther from the truth. People really care, but it's just been so hard for them to enter this space and have needed something like what we're doing. So the responses have been really amazing and rewarding.
Yeah, I'd have to second that. I would say, I'm trying to think of like surprising. I think we're like oftentimes like the situation of, what is the phrase that I'm looking for? This is going to drive me nuts. It's not like happily surprised, but it's something along those lines. But I think we happily surprise some of the establishment sometimes. And we are not like a proxy of the establishment, Dems, Republicans, whatever. But more so like whenever we've engaged with that part of the political space, and I'm thinking of a few interviews in particular where coming on our show, I think to them was a little bit of a risk, or deciding to go in front of the youth vote, which to us is like a duh, like that should be the most important priority, whatever. But like to them, that's not been the voter base that's turned out for them or secured their job, whatever. I think the response from them being like so happily surprised with how essentially the product, the podcast, the conversations turned out, and how they've been able to reach that youth market and then get those people involved in their campaigns or those issues has been like really surprising for them, and therefore almost surprising to us that like it's a surprise to them. It seems so obvious to us, but I guess it's not, which is why it's working.
But something that I recently listened to a lecture or seminar or keynote, that's what it is, by Barack Obama. And regardless of where you stand politically, something that stuck out in what he said was that what he's most excited about is the youth and our ability to sympathize with others and understand that our differences are not a weakness, but it is a leverage point. Especially like with the US and our intermix of different cultures, we have the ability to access all different types of perspectives. And so something I really wanted to shine a light on was the ability to have conversations and have them safely and not feel attacked or threatened, but feel like you can get something new out of it regardless of where your point of view is. So being able to share conversation and being comfortable about talking about politics without it being a topic that makes you nervous or just scared to talk about because you're fearful that others who do not agree with you will judge you for it. And so, or judge the way of how much, or judge whether or not what you know is true. Like that entire concept.
I think that's one of those things that is nuanced because it's going to depend on every situation. What is your knowledge of the person you're having a conversation with, like level of politics? What's the goal of the conversation, right? Is the goal of the conversation to dissect an issue? Is it to talk about a news story? Is it to talk about registering to vote and what their voter plan is? There's a lot of different variables that could happen in those conversations. But I think if it's trying to get a gauge on where someone's at or what the temperature of the room is with the conversation, I think start with questions, right? Like you control where that conversation goes if you are the one asking questions and then therefore getting an idea of where their response is. So that could be the question of, wait, there's an election coming up. Are you registered to vote? Or what's your voting plan? And being a little, not even oblivious is, I don't know what that word is. Why am I struggling with that? Like a little aloof about it and just see what their response is. I think it's like a product test. It's the same thing. You need to test people's reaction first and then gauge it from there. So I think always go in with questions.
Yeah.
And that's the temperature gauge first and foremost.
Yeah. And I think that's like also just a good point too, to even just, we always talk about a good way to bring it up with your friends. It's like a great topic that's pretty neutral, not too scary, is like voting, and be like voter registration, voter information. That's bipartisan. That shouldn't be like the taboo, toxic version of politics I think most people are scared of, because it is that type of topic. It's, we talk about how on a date you don't talk about sex or money, religion, politics, whatever it is. And so
unless
because it's one of
either of us.
yeah.
No topic censored.
Yeah. But it's just always been that topic of conversation. And it's like, that's what's been unfortunate about it too. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the like kind of social and cultural side of politics that has intimidated everyone for so long and pushed people away and prevented people from having those types of conversations with their friends. And so it's just important to like try to break those barriers. And I mentioned it on our episode yesterday about the voting party, and just like even having something like that where it's like fun and friendly, and you get to like collectively with your friends and your circle and the people in your life do this really amazing thing together, which is vote and make it fun. And I think could be a good way to break the ice of like how to bring up politics with your friends. And then hopefully moving forward, it's something you guys can like talk about, or did you see this article? Did you see this candidate? And it can hopefully grow from there. But it just starts with breaking the ice, and it can be scary. But I think, like Sam said, like asking just like questions. And then I think also if you want a topic to use to break the ice, like voting, I think is a perfect place to start.
Yeah. And one other like
really awesome
suggestion on that is always having a lead. So I honestly always recommend the same thing for networking and also for going on a date. It's like walking into a space or having a pre-thought of relevant like little story that's like just happened. So look at like the news like right before you're like, say you're meeting up with a friend or you're going on a date or whatever. Look at what the news just popped up. What notification did you just get on your phone? Oh my God, did you see XYZ thing happen? And just you can see their reaction that way. So that's another way to do it without it also involving yourself personally. So especially if you're really not sure, you have like an iffy feeling on where the conversation's going to go. Like it might not be like where you want it to go. That's a way to at least keep yourself removed, get the temperature before you can figure out what your next steps are, whether that's a larger plan of how you're going to approach a specific friendship, relationship, etc. But it's giving you a little bit of space removed, which I think is always smart.
I think that's a really smart way. I love
too.
Yeah,
just as far as like when you do get into some of those political conversations that can get a little maybe heated, maybe emotional. I think like you went back to talking about being afraid of not maybe knowing what you're talking about or not having like the facts on deck to back it up. That can be a scary thing for people that prevent people from actually having political conversations of being like, I don't want to be wrong or someone to like prove me wrong or for it to get heated or whatever it is. I think it's really always okay to be like, oh, you know what? I like don't know the answer to that. Why don't we like go look it up and then we can like, talk about it another time? Or hey, I know this podcast where they had a guest on that like explains it really well, and like she's actually like doing the work on the ground, and like, you should go listen to her and like, uplift like the people who are doing the work and who are explaining it well. Because sometimes I'm like, I think it's okay to also be like, honestly, like I can't explain this issue and do it justice. Like here's this podcast I just listened to that explains it really well. Like kind of you can divert people to resources, and you don't have to be the one that like knows everything or like, has this like whole repertoire of like political arguments on deck. I don't think anyone needs to worry about that, and it's okay to be like, let's step away and here's a podcast I just listened to. It was great, and like it's uplifting a voice of somebody who's doing amazing work on this issue, and it can help you understand it better. Like it's okay to not be the one that knows all of the answers. So I think that's also like a good tip when you're afraid of not knowing everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing. Those are incredible tips because I think it resonates with me personally as well. It's just because there's a lot of information to intake, and to expect yourself to know it all automatically, it just is, it's not realistic. And so if anything, it's nice to be able to leverage your colleagues and friends' knowledge to your advantage in a comfortable way, just because you just never know what like they may be reading or you're reading, but like the ability to share it with each other can, I feel like, definitely strengthen our ability as like voters to just like, have a grander scope into what is really truly happening politically and in our government. So
yeah, I think it goes a lot into with perspective and like having those open conversations, so then you can gain more. Like for me, I like hearing, no matter what my opinion is on whatever political, social, whatever, economical, I want to hear other people's perspective, because sometimes it's, yes, you've heard it from various sources or done the research, but sometimes other people see other things too. And so having that. And so I think conversations are great, but it is really nice to know those little tips and tricks. Because even as someone who like doesn't like to talk about, or not necessarily, I like to talk about politics, but I get really intimidated when people don't. And when I don't know if like how I go about it is the best way to go about it. And so I think the ideas of bringing up those really neutral topics or like conversations that don't, because sometimes those are like the last things you think if you're like, oh no, if we want to talk about politics, we should talk about the juicy stuff or things that are most relevant, when sometimes it's just, are you registered to vote? And that can be like a total icebreaker.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. And I really appreciate those tips for myself and for our listeners.
I was just going to add is like, there's those like smaller topics, like more locally or state that I feel like for me, like someone who may feel a little bit more external from it, but really isn't, is I'm focusing on what the media is covering the most. And so sometimes it does take more effort and digging to really find what's going to hit home literally for me as like
that's a really good point.
Day to day.
I was just going to say on this note, what we've obviously been talking about like tips and tricks and ways to go about it, but are there specific resources or things that you mentioned, Maddie, YouTube, or you mentioned like various platforms, but are there like specific just tools that you give your listeners in terms of actual resources that you like to just plug really quick that are maybe non-biased or things like that, just to give that open perspective of knowledge coming from sources that aren't really manipulative, if that makes sense?
Totally. Yeah. There's actually an app that we always suggest that I think everyone can benefit from. It's called Ground News, and it actually is an app where like it'll take every article from the New York Post to CNN to Fox or all the kind of big publications. We'll put every article pretty out there about almost everything, and I'll put a scale on like where that publication and where that article lies from like liberal to conservative bias. And I think that's a really good tool to use just so you can understand what perspective that piece of news is coming from, and just so you can like look at it through that lens, be like, okay, like people are a little bit more conservative, let me read through this like with that lens and knowing that it has some bias in it. I think that's a really good thing to suggest. And like I've suggested it to my very conservative uncles, and hopefully they use it. I doubt it, but I think that's a good thing to use for yourself. But even if you are having trouble with family members or people in your life that like you don't agree with, and you may be worried about they're not getting the right information, I think it's just a great resource for people to use to consume your news and to where to go to read articles and such. But we also talk about social media these days and how a lot of our generation is getting their information from social media, which I think can be great, but it also has its downfalls. And it's hard sometimes to search through the noise and figure out what resources to really trust, especially on social media. And so we always talk about like on Instagram, because of the way the platform is set up, you usually only see the people you follow, right? Follow resources that you genuinely trust and you push out good information. On TikTok, it's a little bit different. It's become a really honestly great news source. Like you can get really bite-sized, like fun news recaps, which is great. But because of the way that platform is set up, like you're fed people's content who you've never seen before. So you don't fully know the validity of their content and what they push out there. And so I think you need to be a little bit more careful about what you consume on TikTok, just because you don't always know that the people on your For You page are valid or coming from the right place or getting the right resources. So just always like double check things. I think again, like on Instagram, since you're getting information from people you already follow, you can see their sources and know that they source their information first of all, or that they link to it or whatever it is. But on TikTok, if you see something or hear something, maybe it sparks a certain emotion in you, take a deep breath, take a second, take a step back, and go do a quick little Google search and just make sure that information is correct and like go from there. But there's a lot of amazing resources out there, and we always talk about that too. And we're constantly on our Instagram. We have on our Girl and The Gov Instagram pushing out action items and resources that people can use and look to understand these very complex issues. And then our podcast, we talk with experts every single week about different issues that people need to know about. We ask stupid questions that we all feel like we have, even though they are absolutely not stupid in any way. So there's tons of resources out there and places to start, because that's always the question we get, like, where do people start? Where do I start? So yeah.
Amazing. Those are great little tips. I really like this social media one.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I about the specific app that existed, and I was able to give like exactly the level and giving the people the capability to question. And I think that's really good advice to follow up as well, is that misinformation is definitely a huge issue. And as a generation, it is really good practice to be able to like double check it, and it's okay to double check it, and it's important to double check it, because like it's
check yourself. And it's like sometimes it's hard in the moment to not get caught up in stuff, but like we are so used to instant gratification, us young folk, and I think that makes us feel like we need news that's like bite-sized and immediate, but we need to make sure that we're also holding ourselves accountable and like doing that extra like due diligence to make sure like we're fully equipped with the correct information and can then base opinions and emotions on a certain issue on accurate information. And so it's just always try to like take your time, take a breath, take a step back, and do your little research. I think that's just really important for our generation to tweak about ourselves.
It's also just like not a competition, and like just because you knew about a news story 5 minutes before someone else, like no one's giving you a trophy for that. Like, you know, but I think with the instant gratification culture that we're in, we feel that way. Like I definitely feel that way sometimes, of being like, oh, I should be the first to know, or oh my God, like I got the jump on this. But like at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter. Like it's better to do it right and to know the right information and the correct factually based information than to be the first person to be like, oh my God, did you see this crazy headline? It's just, no one's going to give you a trophy or reward for it. So it's just not worth it. And we always say, use like the rule of three, especially if it's a story that has like an emotional component to you or it's sparking something. Literally Google the topic and read at least 3 articles on that topic. Look at the different biases, see if what facts line up. Is there something that doesn't line up? Is there a reason that one of the publications isn't covering it or not? And I think some of those questions are actually answered by Ground News, because not only do they show you the spectrum of like where it falls, is it liberal leaning, is it conservative, far right, whatever, it also gives you factuality, and it shares who is funding that particular news source, right? So it shares who the Washington Post is funded by, it shares who the New York Times, like all of that information, which obviously goes into what type of bias a certain publication may have, I think is really important for people to be aware of every time they're going to read something in that particular publication, but also for particular stories, because there's going to be a story in the Washington Post that's going to have a lot more of a bias towards its owners than, say, the Boston Globe. So it's just something to keep in mind, but the rule of 3, I think, is a safe bet in terms of particular for stories that are of emotional worth, and honestly, ones that aren't too. It's a solid thing to go with.
I feel like it's a good combination. It's not a bad thing to be emotional, but it's like something that you should intermix with logic as well. Like it's not, it's okay to be an emotional person, but it's to be, just be able to check yourself and just have a broader knowledge of it all. That's incredible. Also,
with news and everything, this is especially a local news thing, but like the old phrase is, if it bleeds, it leads. And sometimes that goes into how someone makes a headline. It's the same way, like if you look at Daily Mail articles, like going off the political spectrum, just into like gossip, like half of those headlines, it's just absolutely out of its mind. Like, oh my God. Yeah. What in the world's happened? And then you read the article and it's nothing actually happened. It's just a sensational headline that is total BS. And so it's totally okay to have an emotional reaction to something. 1,000%. Like some of these things are life and death. Some of these things are going to create an emotional response, and you deserve to feel your emotions any which way. It's more just, okay, is that based off of facts or is that based off of sensational headline? Let's just do the due diligence and see what's happening behind the headline.
It's me thinking about, so the way I think about it is somebody wrote that headline. They wrote it for a reason. They wrote it to have that exact reaction, but it would be more dangerous, I feel like, to not be emotional, but like emotion is, I think, the reason why people provoke action And so it's that to me is that's just being mindful of that. And I love what you guys are promoting right now. It's like you recognize it.
Yeah.
And
I think the emotion is huge. The
Yes.
emotion part is also a very key part of being civically engaged and being a part of any activism or any change. Like, we need people to get emotional about this type of stuff because how are you not supposed to, like, how do you not get emotional about some of these things? Absolutely. But make sure like it's coming from a place of accuracy, obviously, because there are so many times where someone's video on TikTok pops up and they're spewing something and it's, holy shit, is that real? Did that happen? Did that person say that? And then maybe it did happen, but it's missing like a lot of context, or it's just not an accurate portrayal of what actually happened or what was said or whatever. So it's just always important to like, especially when emotion pops up, then like just to double check that like your emotion is valid in that particular case and then move forward from there.
Amazing.
I think it's like passion. Yeah, I think it's just, I was just thinking of like passion versus like perspective, or like how they go neck or hand in hand. Like you have to have passion, you have to have emotion behind these responses, because that's how people act on things. That's how you take action.
Totally.
Is emotion.
Exactly.
And whether or not you choose to like fully bring that into it, obviously, like people always say people are too emotional about things in politics and like emotions need to be set aside. Then how do we solve anything if there is an emotion? Because if there's no empathy, or if there's no response to this makes me feel unsettled, and like I obviously feel weird about this, then how would you even react to it? So I think just it's the ongoing like just conversation of the fact that you need it. You need the emotion, no matter how much people say that you don't need the emotion, because emotion is politics. It's just having that line between where you let that feeling come in or have that emotion, but then also go fact check that emotion, or fact check what made you emotionally respond to that. So if that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing, and it's a really good thing to remember when you see a really like gut-wrenching headline, or you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to see that, or okay, but why don't I want to see that? Let me go figure this out. What's actually going on? So
we really appreciate you having you guys on. Just to close this out, November 8th is coming. Confirming it is November 8th.
Yes.
The elections are coming. And so what could you share with our listeners on how they can get ready to vote?
Yes, it is. First of all, biggest thing to know is that it's different per state. So make sure when you go to get your voter information and voting plan that it is accurate to your state, because again, it is so different. And so even the advice we give can't be blanket across the country because it's so different. Like California, for example, like we all get automatically our ballots sent in the mail to our house. We get to vote by mail. Some states literally don't even give you the option to vote by mail. So it's so different. But I think biggest thing is check your registration deadlines are coming up, or maybe some have even passed by now. So definitely make sure your registration is checked and ready to go. And so that you don't show up on election day and they're like, oh, your registration is incorrect, or you're not registered anymore, or whatever it is. So definitely make that your first step. You can actually go to girlandthegov.com/vote, and we have a check registration portal there where you can check it. You can also register to vote on that same page. So check registration, make a voting plan. So there are also a lot of great resources that help you like create your voting plan depending on your state. So definitely check some of that out. We can share some stuff with you guys to link or whatever. And get to know your ballot, because it's really important to vote up and down the ballot. I think that's something, especially in midterms, but like always needs to be like remembered that there are super crucial elections happening in your city, in your town, in your county, at your state level, at the congressional level, at the Senate level, and it just keeps going up. So make sure you are ready to go. There are also a lot of kind of more obscure races that I think people need to know about. We have some great episodes actually that highlight some of these positions like attorneys general, especially looking at issues like reproductive freedom, your attorney general actually really matters in protecting reproductive freedom in your state. So if you go to one of our episodes, you can learn all about that. The other thing is Secretary of State. We have this unprecedented threat to our democracy right now, where there are people running for secretaries of state, which is the position that oversees elections and like ensures and protects our elections. People are running for those seats across the country right now who are 2020 election deniers and who think that there's widespread voter fraud when there's not. And it's just super dangerous time right now that people really need to be paying attention to some of these kind of more obscure, not always highlighted races. So again, our attorneys general, secretaries of state, but then even down to like school board. And there's just so many really important races. So make sure do that due diligence. It is, I think, my new thing too that I always want to highlight. It is work. And like my ballot, I just opened my ballot today. It's 4 to 5 pages and it's work. And it's like, I'm not trying to I don't want to sugarcoat it and be like, yeah, it's super easy to vote. It's super easy to get ready to vote. But when you get there, like, it's really important issues. It's life or death in a lot of ways. And so it's going to take work. It's going to take some research. And so just be ready for that, but take pride in it and do the work because it's so important. But yeah, Sam, I don't know, all of your tips.
I would say one note too, it's like with these like quote unquote obscure races, like they feel obscure because they haven't gotten the media attention in the past, which is like a real tragedy. And it's something that we're trying to change because that is what so much of this intimidation is around. There's so many of these positions people don't know about and don't know how powerful they are, especially at the state level and the local level. We saw with COVID how much people didn't know about these positions, what powers they held. And so part of our work is really trying to change that and pull back the layers of the onion and show what these roles do so that we can all be familiar with them and they don't become obscure in terms of media coverage. They become the front, the headline of everything. Yeah. Everyone knows what these races, what these positions are about, and therefore can hold their elected officials in these positions accountable. So super important to become familiar with all of these different races, but also specifically these positions. So I would say that just is like one note to that. The other resource that I just want to plug really quickly is vote411.org. This tool is amazing. It's my favorite thing because I love like a little match survey type vibe. And this tool is super easy to use. You can match your state with a particular voting FAQ topic, etc. So say you're in Alabama and you want to know what your poll hours are, you can use the tool to go Alabama and click poll hours, hit apply, and it'll pop out the answer to that question. All of those classic cues. Can I get an absentee ballot? What's the deadline? You can do a little combo with the state that you live in and that particular question and get all of your voter information there. You can also get information on your ballot so you can get familiar with it ahead of time. So that is my recommendation in terms of there. And then last but not least, if you are planning on voting at the polls, one, not only check your location because sometimes it's changed year to year. So even if you're like, oh, I totally always vote at St. Anthony's, it might not be St. Anthony's anymore. So check that first. And also check the directions. Like how long is it going to take you to walk there, run there? I don't know, get on a tricycle and get there, however you transport yourself there, whatever it is, just check the time in which it takes. I do want to also, logistics matter. It's so key. Two tools that I also want to plug that just popped into mind with that top of mind is New York and SF have two tools that I love, and they are a check on how long the lines are at the polls. So I don't know if other cities have this. I'm searching around trying to find them. So if I find any others, I will let you guys know. New York and SF do have this. So you can put in your voting location. You can check as to like how long the line is, what's the traffic like at that location, people down the street, or is it quiet AF and you're going to be in and out in 2 minutes? So it's a nice like plan before you go situation, day of, keep it in mind, especially if you're fluent, you have time on that day. So those are two more tools. Maddie definitely has one because I'm seeing that finger raised.
Yeah, I know. It's just like they always come to me, post thoughts. Also, vote by mail if you have the option. I really, especially if you're a busy gal, vote by mail. It's super easy again, but it depends on your state. The other thing is early voting is a thing. So you can go and early vote, which means like shorter lines. You have more options in certain states. more options on like the actual days you can go vote. So sometimes you get like a few weeks where you can actually head to the polls and go take your time and vote, versus like on election day when usually lines are long or whatever it is. So again, just really check on what your options are in your state so that you can pick the best option for you. And again, get those logistics in order and everything, because that's a big part of that voting plan you need to do. And also it's bring a cheat sheet or whatever you need to do. You can bring notes, like just get prepared and get ready, and also make your priority list of what really matters to you and accordingly. And if you have any questions at all, our DMs are like wide open for anyone with voting questions. You guys can totally slide in, and we are very responsive. So let us know.
Incredible. Thank you guys so much for sharing all these resources.
Thanks.
Amazing. We would like to make the description for this episode a little resource guide for you all. So we will link everything that has been mentioned in the description. So no worries at all about writing each and everything down. We got you. But thank you both so much for joining us on Baddies Mean Business. And we will see you all next Wednesday.
Thank you for having us.
Sam.